All right. Hello, everyone. We are going to get started in just a few minutes. We're going to go ahead and go out on Facebook Live as well. So I'm going to disappear for just a second and I will be back after I get that set up.
Nice.
All righty. Looks like we've got some attendees already jumping on. That is fantastic. For everyone just joining us, this is the Paper Wings presentation with Renee Podanovich and Sonia Horoshko. We're so thrilled to have them here with us today. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes as people join us. Please note, as an attendee, your audio and your audio and video is going to remain silent throughout the presentation to allow Renee and Sonia to present uninterrupted. However, please feel free to put any questions in the Q&A box. We will address those at the end of the presentation. In addition, we would like to invite you to chat with other participants and attendees in the chat box. It's always funny as a presenter, and not being able to see people. We would just love to hear your comments as you join and as the presenters share today. So I think, let's see, we'll give it just another minute or two and then we'll get started.
I saw that. Jeanette.
Yeah, so can we do anything about that?
Yep, give me just 1 second. I'm going to hope that... Okay, I didn't kick off the wrong Renee, did I? There we go. And sorry, I shouldn't say kick off, just move to attendee.
Oh, great.
So okay. She'll be back in just a second.
Joining us. So.
Yeah. Wonderful. Alrighty, well, it's just a little bit after 10:30. We are so honored and excited to have Renee and Sonia here with us this morning. We've all been looking forward to this presentation for a few weeks now and are just so excited to have them here. I hope everyone has their coffee or tea as we go through the presentation over the next hour and a half or so. As I mentioned earlier, participants' audio and visual is going to remain silent throughout the presentation, so there's nothing wrong with your screen, but please feel free to interact with us via the Q&A box. As I said, we will be going through the Q&A at the end of the session, so I'll help moderate that at the end. I have just a few slides to go through regarding the Bluff Arts Festival. This is our annual arts festival, but of course things look just a little bit different this year as everything is virtual but free and all online. Our presenting sponsors are Rocky Mountain Power, Community Rebuilds, Adventure Wealth, and Utah's Canyon Country. We'd also like to remind you that we have tons of folks all around the Four Corners area who help us out every year, and we look forward to connecting with them next year. Of course, what would it be for an arts festival without our virtual Bluff Artist Market? We will be dropping in the chat in just a few minutes the link to go check out we have about 30 artists this year, and on our website you can go in, view their content, connect to them on Facebook and Instagram and their own personal website. So we really encourage you to go support our artists. These are just a few of the wonderful, wonderful folks that we have joining us this year. So I'll drop that in the chat in just a few minutes. We also have a number of upcoming events. We have so many things going on this afternoon. We really encourage you to join us at 1 p.m. for the Wet Anthology, a collection of poetry. And so I think Sonia and Renee can maybe speak to that a little as well. But I will drop that link. That one does not require registration. It is on Zoom. We'll also but we'll drop that link and you can just join. We have a Bluff showcase at 4:30, songs and symbols of the Southwest with Ed Caboti at 5:30. We definitely encourage you to register for that one so you can ask him all your questions and chat with him throughout the event. Our night 2 of the film festival kicks off at 7 p.m. We have a whole host of new videos to show you. We're very excited about that. Should be another great evening in case you missed the first one. As I said, though, different content, so exciting. And then tomorrow we're closing things out with 2 additional events. Join us for any and all of these. You can find out more information at www.bluffartsfestival.org. All righty. Now, without further ado, I will be turning it over to Renee Podanovich and Sonia Horoshko. Ladies, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We're really excited. If you need anything at all, let me know, but otherwise I'll see you at the end.
Thanks so much, Erin.
Thank you, Erin.
The Bluffs Arts Festival for having us today.
Renee and I are so grateful that you've gone online at this terrible time where it's really difficult to get people together. But it actually has turned out to be quite a wonderful event. And we're really grateful that you did this. And I know it was a lot of complex planning. And you've done a wonderful job. So thank you very much. The letterpress book that Renee and I are going to talk about and show you today is a project that we began, I think, Renee, November. We started talking about it November 2019. And Renee and Russ had just returned to live back at home in Dolores. And out of the blue, I just simply said, well, since you're the poet I love and you love my illustrations, why don't we just go make a book over at Mancos Common Press? Because they had announced that their studio was now opening. And so we did. In a way, it was a little bit naive because as much as I know about bookbinding and book production and literature in the arts, the amount of detailed tasking that we needed to learn as we went along really was immense. And our careful process we had to be extremely careful with every single step we were doing. And each page took a day to print, but about 3 weekends prior to that to set it up. So Renee and I did that, and we're very grateful for the Mancos Common Press, Brad Goodell, and all the people on the board over there who saved that building and saved the historic nature of the Platen Press and the other letter presses in that space. I think it's the Ballantine Foundation really did support that and got it going, got it up and running and saved the building. So it is historic in every aspect of it. We also had our friend Scott Calhoun, who lives in Cortez. It turns out he's quite a chase builder, which is part of the process. And also knew so much about typesetting. So Renee was tasked with typesetting her poetry, and we all tried to help, but she got very good at it, and she can tell you about that in a minute. But even the type trays were not orderly by the time we arrived at the studio in Mancos at the Common Press. And so what we spent a lot of time doing was organizing the whole typecase, where the A's, B's, C's, lowercase, uppercase, and all the other spacers and all the things that go into setting a poem one letter at a time, backwards and upside down. And since we had 12 poems and 12 illustrations to do, plus all the lead pages and the closing pages, it really did take a lot more time than what we had anticipated, but we could never have done it at all without all the equipment and the inks and the support of the Mancos Common Press Board of Directors for our project. And we're truly grateful for that. But maybe Renee could now tell you a little bit about the typesetting before we begin to show you some of the things that we did.
Sure. Yeah, so we started in the fall of 2018 and then worked on this the entire year of 2019 and completed it in February of this year, right before the pandemic became very much an emergency, and we have been at home now. So this is so wonderful to revisit this project. And as I was putting together our slideshow, I can't believe we did this, Sonia. It was really a lot of work. And so I think when we first went that day, and the Mancos Common Press had just opened their doors, and they've done a beautiful job at restoration and had been doing some like greeting card printing, but no one had printed a book there. We were going to do this, and Brad Goodall, the manager, kind of looked at us like, what are you ladies thinking? So we pulled this off, and it was amazing. But it did start with, organizing the type and learning how to set the letters. And I have great photos that we took, and I can share some of those with you. And luckily, yeah, we rounded up Scott Calhoun, who had studied letterpress printing in school and was able to help us out so much. So we're really grateful to be able to do this project, and it's just turned out beautifully.
And one of the things that I think our audience might want to know is, why in the heck would we do such a thing? But both of us are artists, and I have been making small handmade books for 20, 30 years now. And they're just simple things that come like from newspapers or whatever I'm working on at the time, prints. It's a process that goes back to the very beginning. If you can think about the rock in the cave, that is also a form of literature. When the paintings were put on the cave walls using charcoal, or pigments from the earth, that was probably the first written, if you can visualize visual art and drawing as communication and literature. That's all we're doing, is communicating. And my faith in small books and small run books, small production pieces, is really strong. And I believe over time they take on tremendous value. It's so wonderful, especially now, to hold a book in your hands and read instead of always being online. We also, during the process, I don't think we have a photo of it, but an example of a small book is this. I don't know if you can see that. This is, during the process, I made this extra one called the Book of Chaos, which was all of our proofs and all of our funny things we were doing. And so now that becomes another little extra ephemeral piece of ephemera that goes into my personal collection. So there it is, 2020, CV19. Small books and art books are a very big collector's market. And we're very proud to have done a whole book that's hand bound, which you'll see the process for hand binding it at the end, when we were accepted a residency at Willowtail Springs to do just the binding of 6 volumes. But I think Renee can start to show us some slides and maybe talk now about the process of typesetting. Was the first step we had to learn.
Yeah, I will go ahead and share our Paper Wings letterpress blog site that I created. And here you can see pictures of our process and of each individual print and the manuscripts, and find ways to acquire those if you're interested. I'm also going to put the link in the chat to that site so that you have it in case you want to go there later, and just so you'll have that link. But let me go ahead and share that now. All right, are we Are we good, Sonia? Can you see
Yeah.
that? Okay, so this is the Paper Wings letterpress. You can see all 12 prints there, and I'm actually going to change the view as we kind of look at this. So here are the 4 manuscripts, which we will talk about that process at the end. That was actually the last step that we did after these prints. So this is the platen press that we used to print on. There are several, there's a really large press that runs large newsprint rolls that used to be the Mancos Common Press was printed on it, but this smaller platen press is what we used. It's really beautiful and restored. Any words about that, Sonia?
Yeah, well, the other one was the Mancos Times, I think is what was printed on that large piece. And Brad was telling us, and actually the architect from the University of Pennsylvania, who comes every summer to Mancos, is the one who discovered these presses behind a wall in this old dusty office. Sadly, that's what's happening to small independent newspapers these days. And the Mancos Times fell victim to that too, sometime about 10 years ago. But an architect had seen the building and walked in and looked behind the wall that is now gone and saw these 2 presses there. And the large one is the one that the Times was printed on. And so the board they put together, the committee, to try to save this building and save these presses because of their historic nature, worked with the University of Pennsylvania, their Common Press department, as well as their architecture department, and wrote the grants that saved the building and saved the presses. And they have since acquired a number of other smaller presses, which if you walk by and they're not open, you can see them sitting in the window. And they're still working on getting the big newspaper press to work. It wasn't quite working while we were there. But this is the platen press, and it kind of goes like this. This is how you print on it, one at a time. So those 2 little things sticking up there are the guards, and those you have to know exactly where your paper goes, and everything has to be in registration. And as Renee goes through this and we talk about it, you'll see how complex the process is. So when that big wheel in the front is what you turn to make the whole operation work. It's 100 years old. It's really groovy. It was so wonderful to use. So,
and you know, the Mancos Common Press restoration story is just interesting in itself. And there's a documentary, I think that Colorado PBS did, or NPR.
Yeah.
If you can find that, and you know, they even matched the pigment of the old paint off the walls. So like that blue in the background, they had matched that to hit the historic
and
so
I also wrote a story for the Free Press when they opened on the history of this project, and it has all the contact people to University of Pennsylvania. You can find that at fourcornersfreepress.com. Put a search in for my name, my byline, and I hope it says something about Mancos Common Press in there. It should, and you'll find it. So,
yes, excellent. So we have a little background here that I'm hoping Sonia could just say a few words about how just our inspiration for this kind of artist print and artist manuscript.
well, it's all artists have a body of work that is peripheral to what they're currently working on. But there have been times in history when artists got involved, first of all, politically, making social comment, and presses became very important for that. And after Gutenberg invented the printing press, it was easier to get stories around, but those were particularly biblical stories. But as time went on and presses became obsolete in the last 20 years, these presses are sitting around in different storage units all over the world. And artists have begun to pull them out and start using them as a fine arts medium. It's not the same as silkscreen or serigraph. It is much more complex than that. It's a limited production. So when you put a chase together and you print whatever it is you're printing, once you're done, if you don't save that chase, which you can't because it's all movable type in there, that's all you have. You don't have an opportunity to go back like in digital printing or in serigraph and put the thing down and do it again. You do it once, and that's kind of the limits of it. So in our case, what we wanted to do was produce 12 poems and 12 illustrations to go with each poem. And because I published Renee's first book back in 2003 and have always loved her poetry and enjoyed reading it so much, and she helped produce Growing Voices, I think that was 2005, and we met many, many other poets, regional poets and writers. I thought it would be wonderful if we undertook an artist book, but it would be very limited. So each page we printed 10 prints, numbered and signed per poem illustration. And then those 12 poems and illustrations then became part of the signatures that made 6 hand-bound books. We have 4 of those still for sale. 2 are spoken for. And we have 4 prints in each run of the poem and the illustration. So as you'll see as we go through it, on the days we were printing on this press, we were printing the small, not the small, the same size as the book, but individual prints. And then we would go to printing a signature, which is a way of folding paper and getting 2 pages out of it. So you eventually sew all those signatures together to make the book. Artists do this a lot, and there's a very big market for handmade, hand-bound books. This is a large format for one. Normally they're much smaller. But think of the Gutenberg Bible. I mean, that's kind of like, I feel the immensity of what we did over 14 months. So yeah, at this point, Renee is, I think that's Renee's hand. It could be, yeah. Is pointing at the final page, which is the title page. We printed that last.
Yes. So, and also we were interested in historical artist books, particularly Matisse's Jazz, just such an enchanting book to look at and to kind of have as an inspiration, you know, pairing poetry with his linoleum blocks and then later paper cut illustrations. So that was kind of some historical basis there. So this is lead type. And this is what we showed up to. You know, Make Us Common Press has done such an amazing restoration, as we said. And at the time we started, the type drawers were still getting sorted out. So there was one case that had enough letters kind of sorted. And we thought we will just use that because it's beautiful. It's 24-point Garamond lead type, but this was kind of the first day over there. And you can see on the left-hand side, that type is not sorted into a case. And so at that point, I think I remember thinking, I'm either going to cry or we're just going to do this. We're going to figure it out. And that's what we did. It became a real challenge. But this lead type gets sorted into a case. And the way the case is laid out, actually, there's these historic words you'll see come from typesetting. There's the uppercase and the lowercase. So literally the upper part of this case has the uppercase letters, and then closer to you, when you're sitting there pulling the type from the drawer, are the lowercase letters. They're not in order, so they're more organized by how commonly the letter is used. And so after a while, I started to kind of memorize where the T's are, where the A's are, where the I's are. And then you start to notice which letters get used quite a bit, because it would be like, why did I use so many words with O's? And now we're finding O's from other type drawers a few times when we didn't quite have enough. But
and also, Renee, excuse me for interrupting, but the other part that was a quick, really steep learning curve was the difference between P's and Q's and M's and N's and U's and V's and W's, and how to keep them right side up. And this, we're speaking of individual letters. It's no word. There are no AND in there. There's no block that says that. So you really have to learn, get that body memory going. And Renee was really, really good at that. And really, it was hard, but you did it.
Yeah, and kind of to do it, I had to just be alone and put my headphones on and listen to some good music and concentrate a lot. And thanks, by the way, to Dante Downey, who took a lot of these wonderful photos one day when he came to kind of document what we were doing there. Here is what it looks like when you set those letters in kind of these little metal brackets. I'm not even sure what those are called, before they go into the chase. But as you can see, you're setting from right to left, and you're setting backwards. And that's why you have to mind your P's and Q's and your D's and B's. And what is the difficult, tedious part of this. And then, so you can see here, the letters, the word snow is here. And then these are spacers, lead spacers, that kind of hold this all together until it gets set in the chase. So I would be able to set maybe about 9 lines in one of the little smaller metal cartridges that they go in. And you can see here, this is a good example of a word and then punctuation. And then each word has a little metal spacer in between it as well. So quite tedious and fun after a while. After this, things go to the chase, which is this metal frame, which then gets inserted into that platen press. And here what you can see, and this is Scott Calhoun's wonderful contribution to our project, because this is a very masterful process and not many people know how to do it. So we were just super lucky, and he was very gracious with his time. We're so thankful to him. But he has set the lines of poems here, and then this is one of the linoleum blocks from one of Sonia's illustrations set in there as well. And then this is wood pieces called furniture that kind of centers everything in here. And then these get locked in. And so the whole thing gets compressed in. And when you lift it up, it's like a pancake of letters in there. And then you hold your breath as it gets carried over to the press and hope that it doesn't get dropped and all these things, but it never did. Anything you want to add on that, Sonia?
Yeah, one of the things that's critical to the whole process is understanding what type height is. And so the Garamond font that we were using, that type, is a certain height. It's a size in width, but it's also a certain size that relates to the chase and the furniture. So the block that comes from my illustration, the linoleum block, is also type high. And as Scotty was helping get this all level and square on the page, and we were just guesstimating as much as we could in the very first one, because once we did the first one, everything had to relate to that placement on the paper. And so not only was he doing side to side, top to bottom, but he was also leveling the height, the surface of it too, so that we could actually get the ink evenly spread across all that was standing up to receive the ink, and then place that ink on the paper when it's in the press.
Here's another look at what happens there and some of the tools involved. This was actually the first print we did. I can see that by the lino cut block. And you can see all that goes into holding that in place. Very, very skilled work that he did for us there.
So here's an
So
example.
interesting, all these tools and things.
So here's an example, if you can see on my little thumbnail of me over here, how high the block is. It's made, it's many layers of wood that's glued together. And then this is the surface of it. And this one is not the one that's in the chase that you see on the screen right now. It's one that was in the last photograph. So
then that chase sits in the press. It locks in, and this round part of the press gets inked. And that is also, was interesting to see how to adjust how much ink would be on there. And so there's several proofs that happen to make sure all of that is correct. And this is Brad Goodall, who helped us out quite a bit. He is the very great studio manager over at Make Us Common Press and was wonderful in supporting our project. So here we're aligning paper and getting ready to print.
So one thing about the paper, Renee and I spent $700 on the paper alone for this project. It has to be 100% rag paper. And at times we had Ed Singer go to Flagstaff and pick up more sheets. They're very large. I think they're, I can't remember how large the big sheet is, but we then deckled them into 4 pieces from each sheet. But he made 2 trips to Flagstaff because this paper was not available anywhere, and they had enough there to do the whole book. We bought them out, and we only have a couple of sheets left. But we needed exactly all the same paper all the way through, not only for the looks of it and the artistic, the aesthetics of the book, but also because of how the ink lays in on the grain of the paper, how it accepts the ink, and how long lasting it will be. So it's 100% rag, it's excellent paper, and that's a signature piece, as a matter of fact. That's one that's printing for the book, I believe.
Yeah, beautiful paper to work with. And here we are running the press. So that means turning this wheel, and that brings the paper up to that ink disc and does the impress there. It's really heavy actually to run. So it was a little bit of like a CrossFit sort of thing to run it. And yeah, I like this historic photo behind too. I don't know if you can quite see that, but it's some of the newspaper staff back with these same presses doing their work. So behind us are the drying racks where things would dry. So then once we get an impress, we would check it for any typos. If there are typos, that meant the chase had to go back to the workbench and get untightened, and those things had to get fixed. So, there's a lot that goes into just getting the first good proof and checking for ink consistency throughout. And then once we decided that everything looked great, we would do 10 prints and the 6 larger signatures for the book later. Here's the first print we did, Illustrious for Brief Moments, which, by the way, is the title of my new chapbook that is on sale now. And I will actually put the link to that in the chat later at the end here if you're interested. A lot of these same poems are now coming out in a chapbook by Finishing Line Press, and are also in our book here. So this was a proof that is so beautiful. Anything you want to say about that, Sonia?
Well, it was an aha moment. I mean, it actually worked. To get to that though, the block itself was was cut backwards. So we had to do two blocks. So we have one that's backwards and one that's forwards. We had to get the right one so that the small junco bird in the illustration is actually pointing toward the poem itself. And what you cannot see here, but when you get to see this print in person or the book, you'll see that the small twigs that I drew in there are actually, they are twigs. They are based on twigs around my house. However, they have small letters in them, so it's like a letter nest as well as a letter press. And that was, I felt it was really an important statement to make visually, and especially on close inspection, that we have a reason to look more closely at something instead of always having things easily adjusted digitally or large type on our phones, which is convenient, I must admit. But the other intimate relationship we begin to develop with these particular prints and these particular books is that um, it is something tactile. It's, as the ink is sitting on the paper, you actually can see it. If you turned it sideways, you could see its raised impression on the paper, and the same is true with the illustration. It was a wonderful moment to get one that worked and have the ink. I think this one we were concerned about some of the ink sort of directly across from the block, and adjusted some of the inking for that. So we always end up with proofs, and those are the ones where we circle with typos or the ink isn't quite right on the block, and we adjust the pressure of the platen press on different places, either the paper or the ink disc that it touches. So yeah, it was a wonderful moment. Yeah.
And here we are, so proud of that first print with Scott Calhoun. And again, I love this historical photo behind us because there's a man and two women working on the press there. So, and you can see the chase there and our first print.
And you can see the scale of the print to human beings.
Yes.
So you have an idea how large it is.
Yeah. And here's a great illustration that Sonia did of the platen press itself. So that is what we did at Minkus Common Press. We would do one print a month for a year to get 12. It took a little longer than that, a few months because of our schedules and things. And I guess this is, I wonder if we could see this a little better. So this is the first one that we did. And in fact, why don't I just read it? It's illustrious for brief moments. Today is another chance to be fully alive, present in the what is, the light and dark embodied, the movement from dreaming to waking dreams, all of it the same mysterious fabric. Sunrise, juncos feast at the feeder, cheerful in the chill white. Light lands on feathers and drifts. We are far, far from our summer selves. Stillness, seeds, and scattered words become our dream food. We are held aloft, illustrious for brief moments, before our feet sink through to the solid frozen earth, dark matter, the underworld that will once again birth us at sunrise.
Wow, thank you, Renee.
I wonder how I get it back out. Uh-oh. Okay. There we go. So, thank you.
Renee, thank you for that. And actually a line in it always struck me where Renee wrote, dreaming to waking dreams. It really was that kind of process doing this, because this was an idea that we had in November 2018. Just a comment standing in my garden here, and just a comment, and it went from a comment to an idea to a more concrete idea, to calling on our skill as writer, illustrator, and collaborative artists to create something real in the world. This is a waking dream, and it's material, and our feet are, and our hands and our hearts are solidly behind this project. And as you can tell, we're very excited about it and very pleased.
So I'm going to go to a different view on this. And again, I put the link to this blog in the chat so that you can go ahead and see it. But here you can see each of the individual prints in a row here. So you could take a look at each one and see the illustration with the poem. There's one poem that we broke into a triptych, Icicle Medicine. It has 3 parts. Actually, they can be standalone or the set. And then let's go ahead and look at,
could you show those 3 in a row, Renee? Because it's very interesting how we had to do that. In the type, well, the illustration on this comes from a tremendous project I did in the late 80s and early 1990s, where I resurrected an extinct period of Persian carpets from the Timurid dynasty. And while I was doing that project, and the court carpets were actually being produced in Peshawar, in Pakistan, I came upon the leitmotif of cloud bands in Persian literature. And at one point, the artists at that time, about 1370 to 1505, began to draw clouds around their script, and it would lift the concept that the script was conveying, and it would travel. And I was always so struck by it. And they have a certain movement to them, a certain look, and eventually some of the script left the actual leitmotif of the cloud bands. So when Renee wrote this poem about the icicles, and it was really long, we knew that we could not put that on one page, and to break it into 3 parts gave us an opportunity to move the language through 3 pages. And that means moving it through time and space. Even though it's a material thing, it's moving through time and space, which was actually what triggered this memory for me, this visual memory with the cloud bands. But at the same time, because we're dealing with birds and flight throughout this book, there was one key symbol that kept showing up in the typecase, and you can see it in the upper right. It's a beautiful crane. And we used it in these 3 pages, where we took one poem and broke it from the push on the left to the center, where the cloud band has stretched out and the crane is moving off. And now there's 2 cranes. And then it moves to the conclusion of that one poem, which is essentially a triptych, with the one big, I call it a dark moon at the bottom of that cloud band, and it still has a crane in it. So you'll see the justification on these pages, and the intent of the illustrations to move with the language and move the language through time and space to the reader, and the one who's holding the book or the print was our intent. So I love those 3 pages too. So thanks, Renee.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that. And this is a good one too, where you can see why these are called signed. They're numbered. There's a limited run of 10, and so they're numbered 1 of 10, 2 of 10, 3 of 10, etc. And so people who are collecting these may choose to get the same number of each run, and then are signed by both Sonia and I there. So here, is all 12 of the prints. And maybe I will switch back to our other view so that we can scroll way down here to where we took the rest of this project to Willowtail Springs. I'm trying to get there. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy by scrolling so fast.
So I'll tell you a little bit about Willowtail Springs. It was founded by Peggy Cloy, who was Peggy Conklin when she first got here. She arrived when I arrived, and both of us about 29 years ago stood in the old Walmart in front and behind of each other, there, and she turned around and looked at me and she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Who are you?" And we met at that point, and both of us artists, both of us coming from very urban lifestyle to here. She, of course, bought this beautiful piece of property, and I bought my small home in Cortez. But both of us have been contributing for this whole time, believing that the arts really matter to our community's well-being and to the quality of life. Peggy eventually, her husband Lee joined her, and they have now become a not-for-profit and use the studio space there for residencies. So when we reached this point where we needed to bind the book, the issue is it takes a lot of space to do it, and we had to print the covers. We had to figure out all the little pieces that go together to make it work, and all the glues, had to test the glues. We needed space, and we applied to Peggy and Lee and asked them if we could be awarded a, a residency, and we were. We could not have finished this in my house. We have no studio space in Cortez, which is typical of what the issue is always in Cortez. No exhibit, no studio space. But Willowtail Springs offered that for a whole week, and she even asked us to stay a little longer. And it was right when we were hearing rumors of COVID, but we were not paying attention to that. We were paying attention to this, which is a wonderful step. And we're so grateful to Peggy and Lee and Willowtail Springs and Mayo and the group over there. So
yes, and Mayo was so thoughtful and helpful to us, and I think is listening in. So thank you to all of that crew, and to use Peggy's studio was just so wonderful. So here are the 4 handbound books, and there's one behind me actually, and there's one behind Sonia.
I have one too.
So you can see the scale of these is quite large, and they're lovely, and we'll show some pictures of them here. These are the spines. This is just some detail that you can see about the book. These are the spines. These are the perfectly bound pages. Oh, so lovely. This is a vellum page that we put in memory of our good friend Martha Lawrence, who used to collaborate with us on so many beautiful projects and was an amazing poet. And it felt really good to have her in here on this one vellum page that adds a very magical quality into the book.
Wait, go back to that just a second. The thing about the vellum is it's transparent to a certain degree. So it lays on top of the poem itself. And that is where the title for the book came from. And it's really a beautiful page. We're so pleased with that. So,
yeah.
Okay.
This is the title page. This is the copyright kind of page. And this is the cover. And then here we'll get into our process of printing. So this is the lovely studio space at Willowtail Springs. And I'm here with Peggy Cloy chatting and telling her about our project. And you can see how those signatures or double-sided pages got folded in half, and now they are in their stacks waiting to be hand sewn at this point. And so this is what the end result of this was. So it's using linen thread, is that right, Sonia?
Yes.
And all, to make the holes. And this blue sheet under here is the pattern we used on each page so that those holes line up exactly along the spine.
Yeah.
And it was like a sewing project.
Yeah, so let me say one thing here. Excuse me for interrupting.
No, go ahead.
It is really essential that absolutely 2 things. One is your hands are always clean, because if you have ink on your hands or paste or something, coffee spill or something like that on the table, you will ruin a $2,000 book right there. And it's really essential that every single part of it be completely considered. So at this point, we had these blue paper patterns, as in sewing. We knew exactly where the all hole should go for each signature, so that when we stacked them together, we could sew it in the truly in a Renaissance Italian bookbinding manner, one signature to the next signature, and you have to go across it, and then you have to go back and do the next one and attach it to it. So each book had 6 printed signatures and then end sheets, and so there's probably 8 or 10 in each book times 6. So it was a lot of sewing, and it had to be accurate and tight. And you'll see on the left side of that, by my right hand, there's a small missal, MISSAL, I made at Mary Ellen Long's bookbinding workshop in Durango, probably 15 years ago, and it's based on exactly the same process, but it was about the wind in the aspen trees at the Aspen Guard Station residency I did. And I wanted to take that tiny work and put it into a small book, like a prayer book. In my Ukrainian Orthodox background, that was important to me. So that was an example that we could do the same process, but this time we're much bigger. So.
And then at that point, the spines are ready for the book cloth, which is kind of a mesh cloth that we ordered. It gets glued on there, and so that reinforces the spine. And then these sort of end linen tabs go there as on the ends of the books here. You can see those. And here's a stack that's drying. So there was a lot of drying that happened. And things drying in piles under bricks overnight, and we would then come back and see. So then we had the matter of the cover, and we had to kind of conceptualize what we wanted the cover design to look like. We are using a linen cloth for the cover, and this was an example of several just experimental things we did using different glue and different ink and different ideas until we decided on the cover here.
And that chaise lounge in the corner, we'd go over there and swoon once in a while, take a rest.
Yeah. So this is the block that we chose to print the cover with, and this is a paper pattern we made that showed us how to line up this printing. And it was very exacting. So we had proofs and extra pieces that we did experimentation on a lot until we came up with final product. Here is an example of that pattern next to a printed cover. And then once those got printed, they had to dry. And then this shows the heavy cardboard that cover gets attached to. And this is actually very exacting, because the spine and these spacer pieces had to be just exactly so that everything would go together correctly. And then here I am folding the cloth over and making nice, perfect corners. And then that would dry. And then I guess we don't have a picture of this step, but what happens is that the blank pages on each end of the book get glued to these covers and end up covering over this material, which is also took 4 hands. I mean, I don't know how we would have done that otherwise. One person could not do this alone. And there they are drying.
Yeah, they're under fire bricks that I went and bought them at Slavin's because we needed weight that we could move around easily. So,
and here I am, like, so proud. I look like I'm 5 years old holding up my first art project. But that's how it really felt, that happy to complete this. And just, again, Peggy was so encouraging to us in our process and had us stay a few extra days to be able to pull this off. Here they are together. And there again, there's 4 of those for sale. And the individual prints are also for sale. So I see that it's 11:25. Sonia, is it now a time for questions or?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
So let me stop sharing my screen and we'll come back.
Hi, Renee.
Oh, ladies, that was absolutely lovely. Just beautiful work. The love, the detail, the patience that went into that project. Oh my gosh. I can barely sew a hole in my shirt. I can't imagine sewing a dozen books. So I just am so impressed. Um, so folks, please feel free to drop questions into the Q&A box. While we're waiting on that, I've got a few questions for you all. What did you learn about yourselves during this project?
Oh, well, Renee, go first. You're already there. Go ahead.
Oh, I learned just a lot. I really like a detailed project like this that takes a long time. And I've had other projects that take a while, you know, putting together a collection of poetry takes a while. Those poems, for me, take a long time to produce. So like my new chapbook, that is several years worth of work for me. And it usually pairs with some kind of discovery process about my own life. And the letterpress project really gave me a focal point in 2019, which was a difficult year for me personally, and I think in our world as well. And this project really felt like that for all 3 of us, I think, Sonia. It was like this focal point where we were finding meaning and purpose and just had something very tangible to come back to and focus on. That created a lot of meaning in my life at that time.
Yeah, I agree, Renee, and the chance to actually work together again, and that collaboration that worked in 2003 has always worked. It continues to work. We work well together.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, because I have done this, I have been an artist, well, since I was probably 7 when I picked up a violin. The accumulation over 75 years of knowledge and experience is extremely valuable, and more so as you age. I would hope that people who are approaching this time in their lives, as I am in right now, can honor what they've learned and have someone, you know, want to learn from you, because we have so much to give and so much to learn. And in this process, even though I had done bookbinding before, I was actually scared to death when we went to Willowtail, because I had done so much research on the paper and the process. And then we got to the bookbinding part, and I all of a sudden realized I knew it. I just had to recall it, and I was able to recall it and able to get the materials and the techniques, study the techniques again, and get the equipment we needed. It was very heavily loaded with equipment. But then to have this success at this time is really significant for me. I'm really, really happy about it. And I feel it was worth the effort, because I am changed for the better, always. No matter how old you are, you still have an opportunity to get better at things. And I feel wise in this project because of its success with Renee.
Thank you, Sonia. And I also want to echo what an amazing collaboration this was, and what an honor it was to work with you, Sonia. You've supported my writing for so many years, and we have so many collaborations, and this one is just phenomenal. And so it was great to spend this year and this time. And it's just amazing to have an artistic mentor. Sonia has really been that for me in my life. And it is a large reason when I came back from living in Salt Lake City, I knew that I wanted to work with her again at this stage in our lives. And it was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just so wonderful to hear. Those relationships are always so dear to your heart. We do have a few more questions coming in from Dante. Not so much a question, but he just wanted to say, just it. This came out so beautifully. You both put so much hard work into it, and it just is so amazing. Very proud of the two of you.
Aw, thank you, Dante.
Thank you, Dante.
Maureen May, a current artist in residence at Willowtail Springs. What did you mention what type of paper was used for this project?
We have it on the website, but quite frankly, this morning, as I just went on and said how great it is to be able to recall all of this, I can't recall the name of it.
Is it Strathmore?
It is a Strathmore. Yes, it is. Strathmore, right. Usually I work in arches, 100% rag. That's why I was blocking on it, but we couldn't get that in the size that we needed and the amount we needed. So we could locate the Strathmore paper in Flagstaff.
It's 100% rag,
Yeah.
archival paper.
Amazing. Liz Close would like to ask, she said,
Oh.
this presentation is just an entire work of art. Thank you. Are you two considering other projects or maybe teaching the process to others?
Whew. Who knows?
Well, as part of our Willowtail residency, we were to have some presentations there for the public, and that just got stalled out because of the pandemic. So at some point that I'm sure is on the table with them.
And it would be wonderful to have, when we can be together again. Liz lives in Salt Lake. She's a friend through Animal Artworks. And
Okay.
her sister Maggie works really hard for Black Hat Humane Society, and that's how I met Liz. And she does needlework and felting, and she made me my pink hats for 2016 that I wore in demonstrations. Anyway, Liz, let's try when we can all be back together again, and if we can locate some workshop space that will work for this, we'd love to do it. Using the press though, and using the Manka's Common Press is really something we'd have to arrange with them, because it's difficult to maneuver through the technical parts of that in any extended period of time. But we can figure something out for you. It'd be fun.
Love to hear it. Wonderful. If anyone else has any other questions, definitely feel free to pop those in the Q&A. My final question for you is, what surprised you the most about this project? I mean, I know there are so many little details, but was there one thing that stood out as something you just didn't quite expect when you went into it?
I think for me, the length of time, I'm always concerned about time these days, because I'm very occupied with a very full life, and I want to make sure these projects get done. And this one took so long, but it also had this exclamation mark at the end that had to do with care of each other in our community. We really didn't anticipate that, and so to have to set aside something that is our heart's project, to pull back and stay safe and keep people safe and put this aside while we deal with other things, was really, I think, a part of this that no one, of course, could anticipate, but we've not had a chance to share this. And I think if you have a copy of this, by the way, Erin, if the Bluff Art Festival would share this with Willowtail Springs and Manka's Common Press particularly, that would help satisfy some of their needs to get the word out about both of the projects and what they're doing. But for me, that idea that we would take what was our personal concern that took so long and was so expensive, and every week we spent more money, and we never once said we can't do that. We never once held back. Renee would run off and buy portfolios, and I'd go get some paper, and then we'd reimburse each other, and we figured the whole thing out, and we invested in it, not only time, but an enormous amount of money. So the value of what we did economically is in the project and you can see it. And I really want to emphasize, this is not a greeting card. This is not a little tiny book that you write in a journal. This is the real thing, like they did in the Renaissance. And so hopefully over time, these will be collected by people who appreciate what we committed to it. But also the bigger commitment that we fit it in before COVID and then waited patiently. And here we are online, which couldn't have been nicer. It's just a wonderful thing, Erin.
Yeah. Was the question what surprised us or what we learned?
Surprised, yeah. Just something that maybe you just didn't expect at the beginning.
It was an interesting process as a poet to, show up there with a poem on a page that gets printed however you want on your printer, including the, which margin and indentations and things, and then to realize how that was going to translate onto this press. So it was like this process of deconstructing these poems letter by letter, and just being with the words for a long time as I would set them. And so I had to adjust to the medium. I had to adjust the way everything just went to the right margin, like I decided. And I did shift and adjust some of the wording, some of the line break and things. And it was just really interesting. And so there was sort of this surprising life from the poems as they interacted with this medium. What kind of came out of that was beautiful and surprising. And I do have a chapbook of poems released right now from Finishing Line Press, and I'm actually going to put the link in the chat for people who are interested in ordering that, perhaps, because some of the same poems are in a different form. So the letterpress book, these poems got adjusted in a certain way. So it was really interesting to learn from the press and the materials and to respond to them.
Yeah, and actually, as a visual artist, the illustrations come from a variety of different sources in my life, but to be able to apply those drawings and those illustrations, either from paintings, the idea from a painting, or from a contour drawing, or a gesture study that I did at Hovenweep or something, to take them and reapply them, reassess them, redraw them, adapt them to Renee's language was, at first it was a little terrifying because I wanted to make it more direct for the reader, but then I let go of that on the first print. Once the bird that I drew and the twigs needed one more thing, and I could add the letters hand drawn. They're actually hand drawn this big to begin with, and then I reduced them and then started drawing them again very tiny, which Dante would appreciate because he's quite the artist and journalist in very small formats. But once I did that, and then the concept changed, and I had to stay very fluid with Renee's language and her words, and the indents, and the way it was positioning on the paper, how you lead the eye from one place to another place, how you, in the justification, go from one concept to the next concept, and where do you break the lines. And watching Renee go through saying, we should start setting something and say, wait a minute, I've got to take this apart and look at it again, and then work on how you can eliminate words, eliminate things that you don't need. And because I was trained in Bauhaus design principles when I was 20, the idea that you reduce until you have the essence of what you're doing before you, and it reveals itself. And that process, together with Renee's poems and what I had already drawn and what I was thinking at the beginning, to what actually got put on the blocks and printed, was just a magnificent process for me. Yeah.
That's just incredible. It sounds like the synergies between you two are just a match made in heaven. That's wonderful. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Definitely want to direct folks into the chat box for the blog and for the other links that Renee has shared. For everyone, I was going to say for everyone else watching, are there other places that they can follow you, or other places they can look for your work for both of you?
I'm on Facebook. Just find me there. It's so much easier. But the other thing that Renee and I are doing, and is coming up soon today, is um, the first public appearance of our anthology that we started in Cortez in 2019. Is the title of it is Wet, an anthology of water poems and prose. It includes 29 writers from the large Four Corners region, starting in the mountains in Telluride, all the way out to the horizon where it's more arid. And that starts today. That Zoom presentation is at 1 o'clock. It's a very easy link through Bluff Arts Festival to that. Laurie Hall from the Montezuma Food Coalition, who is the director of that, and the coordinator of the Share House Press, will be the moderator. And Renee and I are part of that founding group of 4. Michael Thompson from the Shiprock area and Farmington, and Gail Binkley from Four Corners Free Press. And Renee and I curated and found that writing from 29 authors. It's a book about speaking love to water. It's not about how many straws are in the river or journalism. So it's a relief in this time, and I think you'll all enjoy that. Please join us for it.
Yeah, that's been another wonderful collaboration to do, and very excited how it's coming out. And all of the people, that we've met, at readings, sometimes people ask me who are my influences, and I always come back around to our regional writers. I love the writing community around the Four Corners, and have just loved working with people over the years and seeing their writing develop. And the Wet anthology really highlights some of the amazing voices. As far as finding more of my work, I'll put my writing blog in the chat also. It's kind of where I post different writing projects that I have going on, and links to my books and online publications and things. Lots of things.
Wonderful. Oh, that's just
One
lovely.
thing that Renee doesn't, she never brags, but I'm going to brag on her. One of the reasons we have a number of poets from Telluride is Renee was the recipient of the 2019 Cantor Poetry Prize. And that was such an honor for all of us to have her win that, but she had no idea until it happened. And it was certainly well deserved. And Art Good Times and Rosemary Watola Trommer and all of the people up in Telluride were so supportive of really fine writing at their Telluride Institute. At the same time, there were 2 writers there that we met who are now in the anthology. Luis Lopez, who is the Western Colorado Poet Laureate, and he's from Grand Junction. And Rafael Jesus Gonzalez, who is the poet, a lifetime City of Berkeley, California Poet Laureate. Both of them are involved in what Renee was doing there and have agreed to be in the Wet anthology. So as you see, the way we sewed these books together is kind of what leads to how you collaborate and you begin to sew and knit your communities together. And that's what we did in the Wet anthology. My goodness, we've had a busy 2 years here.
It
I'm so
certainly
grateful.
sounds like
Yeah.
it. Oh, just love that's so exciting and sounds like a great group of people who are going to be on at 1 o'clock today. That's 1 o'clock Mountain Time. We look forward to seeing you both then as well. We've dropped that link into the chat, and you can also find it on the Bluff Arts Festival website as well. Just go ahead and click it, it'll log you straight on to the webinar. And then if there's anything else, Sonia and Renee, please feel free to share. We're just, again, so thankful to have you this morning. This has been absolutely wonderful to see your love and just beautiful, beautiful artwork that's gone into this project.
Would you please tell us who's there? Like, I know Deb Harriman joined us or did, and
Yeah.
and Dante, and who else is there?
So we have Ann Kramer from over in Bluff, Caroline Ellis, Dan Myers, and I can send you this list as well. I see Dante's still on, Irene Hamilton,
I read.
Liz,
She's one of the writers in Wet.
wonderful, Liz Close. I'm gonna maybe mix this one up. Mayo,
Yeah.
Mayo, okay. Nancy, Naomi Chuckwak,
Hmm.
Peggy,
Oh,
Rose, and Wendy Smith.
nice.
And there's another, and my mom is on. Thank you, Jeanette Minetti, my lovely, beautiful mom, for supporting me and listening in. And thank you, Erin, and the Bluff Arts Festival. We're so excited to showcase this. Thank you very much. And everybody who attended today, thanks so much.
Yeah, you really have set a precedent, Erin, at the Bluff Arts Festival. Thank you for how professional you are. We really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. This has been so wonderful. We want folks to go check out all of your other wonderful projects, and we'll see everyone back here at 1 o'clock today. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.